Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is our fifth day of the series on the witnesses to humanity. We are describing the lives of those individuals who stood up against oppression and injustices and offered all that they had to defend what they believed in. We talked about Joan of Arc, we talked about Galileo, we talked about others also. Today we are going to focus on two very interesting figure in the history of Muslims, that is Hallaj and Sarmad Kashani. One lived in the Middle East and the other in India, and both have a almost similar fate, that both faced the death at the hands of those people who disagreed with this idea. So without any delay, I would invite my colleague and my friend Dr. Walji to speak on the lives of those two individuals and share his understanding and his conclusions drawn from their struggles. Dr. Walji, over to you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Once again, welcome everyone. Today we explored the life of Mansur Al-Hallaj and also Sarmad Kashani. As Dr. Aslam said, there are so many similarities in the lives of these two mystics. The trajectory of their lives are also very similar. And the depth with which they try to understand reality has also so many similarities. Let's begin with Mansur Al-Hallaj. His life and martyrdom continue to inspire and thought, particularly in the realms of mysticism and spirituality. He was born in 858 Christian era in the city of Tus in Persia, in the region of Khorasan, which is present-day Iran. He later moved to Baghdad, a major center of learning and culture in the Islamic world then, where he immersed himself in the study of Sufism and Islamic mysticism. He traveled extensively, spreading his teachings and seeking deeper meanings and deeper understandings of the divine. To go into the detail of his mystical thought and understanding is not the purpose of this. This is to introduce the personality of Hallaj and say, what was that historical and the political context where Hallaj was persecuted and then he was executed? One needs to consider the political and the religious landscape of the Banu Abbas, the Abbasid Caliphate during his time. During Hallaj's time, the Banu Abbas had the most powerful and perhaps culturally vibrant empires. At that time, Baghdad was the capital, was the hub of intellectual, scientific, and artistic activity. However, the period was also marked by political instability, religious tension, and repression. At the same time, initiated and promoted by the Khilafat at that time, the Islamic religious authorities were deeply concerned with maintaining the orthodoxy and safeguarding the Islamic faith from what they perceived as heresies. And Sufism, with its emphasis on personal and spiritual experience and mystical practices, often clashed with the more rigid interpretations of Islam promoted by these authorities. Hallaj's teachings focus on the intimate and the direct experience of the divine. He believed that the true union with God was possible through deep devotion, spiritual discipline, and the annihilation of the self. This is mysticism. His most famous declaration Al-Haq, that I am the truth, encapsulated in his belief in the unity of the human soul with the divine. Obviously, he was misinterpreted. It was convenient to misinterpret. Hallaj's assertion of being one with God was seen as a profound expression of divine love and spiritual realization. Many today would challenge that. But if one looks at it very deeply and tries to understand, and as I said, this is not a place to discuss the spiritual realization that Hallaj was talking about. The idea here is to say that he was challenged by the orthodox religious views, as he would be today in some cases, because it appeared to blur the distinction, according to them, between the creator and the created. And this is an ongoing debate within the Islamic theology and so on and so forth. But what he did was that, unlike many Sufi mystics who would retire in loneliness and who kept their experiences and teachings within very small, close circles for this very reason, that they would have issues or others would have issues, Hallaj had the courage of preaching what he believed openly in public. And this brought him, obviously, widespread attention and significant following too. But it also increased the scrutiny from the religious authorities. I just share a short anecdote and move on with Sarmad. He was not his contemporary, but he was very much in tune with what Hallaj's beliefs were. That one of the most telling anecdotes, besides the statement that he made of Al-Haq, is his profound connection with the divine was available or was evident in his everyday metaphors as he would use to explain these deep spiritual truths. This was his ability to be able to convey the deeply mystical spiritual truths to the layperson. Once he was having a meal with his followers, and he thought, here's an opportunity to talk about mysticism. So he holds up a piece of bread and says, this bread is my body. Now, if this can have many connotations, but he says, this bread is my body. And his followers were confused and asked him to explain. And Hallaj said, just like this bread is broken and gives me physical strength, meaning when I break it, when I eat it, it gives me physical strength. He said, I am broken and filled with divine love, which gives my soul strength. The whole idea of him being able to explain as to where that soul or where that spiritual strength came from, using a piece of bread, was his way of highlighting his beliefs and that intimate connection between the human and the divine. Politically, his teachings placed him at odds with the religious and the political establishment of the time. He was obviously a threat to religious orthodoxy because his claim of divine union and his charismatic influence were seen as a direct threat to the established religious order. As we saw yesterday in the previous cases, where be it Galileo or be it Joan of Arc, as soon as something is seen as a direct threat to the established religious order, next comes repression and execution. The same pattern repeats. His teachings were perceived as heretical and dangerously influential. Also, the Abbasid Caliphate at that time was experiencing political turmoil and factionalism internally. So, the religious authorities, in collusion with political leaders, were keen to suppress any movements of figures that could destabilize the social order, that could destabilize with people asking questions by way of critical thinking. We saw in the case of Socrates that he was accused of misleading the youth. The same thing applies to say anything that is seen where there is critical thinking is perceived as a threat to the establishment. So in 922 Christian era, during the reign of Al-Muqtadir, the Abbasid Caliph, Hallaj was arrested and brought to trial on charges of heresy and blasphemy. And despite his defense and support of some very prominent figures, he was condemned and he was subjected to brutal torture and was publicly executed in Baghdad. He was flogged, mutilated, and eventually crucified, enduring his suffering with remarkable serenity and faith. We come to the life and death of Sarmad Kashani, a mystical poet in the same vein as Hallaj, a seeker whose profound insights and unwavering quest for truth left a lasting legacy. His life and martyrdom continue to inspire and provoke thought, as we said, in the field or in the circles of mysticism and spirituality. Born in 1590 in Christian era in Kashan, again, which is modern day Iran, he is said of being of Jewish origin, who later converted to Islam. There are numerous stories, but this seems to be one of the more reliable ones. He traveled extensively and eventually ended up in India, where he became known for his poetry and spiritual teachings. He came to India during the time of the Mughal Empire, a period that was marked by great cultural and religious diversity, as well as political intrigue, as we all know. To understand, again, why Sarmad was persecuted and the similarities are uncanny, we need to consider the political and the religious landscape of Mughal India during his lifetime. And I hope that Dr. Aslam will be able to share some more light, because his knowledge on that era and that period is simply, unmatched. So the Mughal Empire, during his time, was culturally vibrant. Intellectual, artistic development were at their zenith. But under the Emperor Aurangzeb, particularly, he was experiencing a lot of political and religious tension. And the Orthodox religious authorities had found a new ally in Aurangzeb. They were concerned with maintaining orthodoxy similar to the Abbasids and safeguarding the Islamic faith from what they perceived again as heresies. So, once again, Sarmad's teachings, which focus on the intimate and the direct experience of the divine, was seen as a threat. And very much like Hallaj, Sarmad was also known for his open and public expressions of spiritual beliefs, which, like Hallaj, brought him followers as well as critics. It is said, and I'll end on this anecdote and pass this back to Dr. Aslam to make an observation, because I'm keen to hear, his perspective, that one of his telling anecdotes about his profound connection was his unwavering commitment to expressing what occurred during a meeting with Aurangzeb, the Mughal emperor. He was known for wandering the streets of Delhi almost unclothed, in some cases symbolizing his rejection of worldly attachments and his pursuit of spiritual truth. Now, there are many different stories about what this conversation with Aurangzeb was, and perhaps Dr. Aslam may be able to elaborate further. But my research tells me that when Aurangzeb demanded that Sarmad recite the Kalama, the full Islamic creed, he simply recited that there is no God. And he stopped there. And Sarmad provocatively responded when Aurangzeb questioned that he had not recited the full Islamic creed of La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. His response was that he was still in a process of seeking the truth and had not really reached the second part of the creed yet. And this profound and daring statement, highlighting his relentless quest for spiritual authority or authenticity, led him to much bigger troubles. And Aurangzeb, who was known for his strict adherence to Islamic orthodoxy and his efforts to suppress what he viewed as heretical movements, led to the execution of Sarmad in 1661. He was arrested and brought to trial on the charge of heresy and blasphemy. And once again, despite his defense, he was publicly executed in Delhi during his suffering. Once again, be it Al-Hallaj or be it Sarmad. And for that matter, when we look at the divine love that Imam Hussein possessed and the courage that he had, each of them embody a unique yet a parallel spiritual journey by marked by unwavering devotion to divine truth, their courageous challenges against injustice, and their enduring legacies of wisdom. Each of them, through their unwavering devotion and their courageous stand, gave the ultimate sacrifice. These are the similarities when we look at those who challenge worldly authority and so on and so forth. So with that, I give this back to Dr. Aslam to elucidate a little bit more on these two personalities that we have covered today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walji, for this wonderful representation of the ideas of the two very controversial figures within the Muslim history. Say controversial in the sense that a lot of confusion exists around their personalities and their beliefs. You know, about Hallaj, there are people who say that there were two different Hallaj. And the same is said about Sarmad. Two different ones. One who was saying, Ana haq, I am the truth. In other words, claiming to be divine. And the other one was saying, Ana min al-haq, I am from the divine, or I am a manifestation of the divine guidance and the divine will. You may call the second statement a statement of arrogance, but it could also be a statement of confidence in one's own ability to relate with the divine guidance and divine message. And the same goes with Sarmad Kashani. Sarmad Kashani was said to be someone who was non-ritualistic in many terms of that particular time. And he was challenging the authorities quite regularly on their basic ideas. And he said, he made the case that he has reached to the point where he believes that there is no God. But in order to have accept Allah, accept God, means accept the one entity, probably he would need more time to think and more time to reflect. And probably establishment was an airy as an agent of God to basically send him back to God to see directly what his relations with God were. But this has happened throughout human history, not only with Islamic faith, not only with the Arab culture or Iranian or Indian, but in China, in Italy, and in France, and in South America. Whenever the established ideas are being challenged, whether in politics or in religion or in cultural realms, you find individuals who, as defenders and as contractors of religion, stand up and start saying that, well, you did not do it right. You don't deserve to live. You deserve to die. Which is, of course, against the basic divine teachings. Life is sacred. Life must not be wasted like that. But this is some harsh reality that we have to acknowledge has existed throughout our history. And so far, we have not even reached to that basic fundamental issue of our uh, belief system, and that life has to be sanctified, life has to be preserved and protected. And both Hallaj and Sarmad were basically the icons of freedom of expressions. And if God has made us free, who are you to basically stop me from expressing my freedom? I'm expressing it because I believe and I think that way. If you think the other way, I'm not, asking for your death. I'm not asking for your decimation. And I think we ignore that kind of factor throughout human history. That kind of idea have have continued to exist. That you cannot deprive human beings of the process of independent thinking and autonomous thinking and taking actions on the basis of those. What is remarkable with these individuals, as we have seen, is that they stood up their grounds. They did not compromise. And when they did not compromise, all that they had was their life. And when the opponents decided to take it away, they offered it. And Sarmad Al-Hallaj basically did not lament and did not mobilize the supporters and saying that come and revolt against this. This is the price that we are willing to pay. And I think that is something that has to be acknowledged. That human spirit, no matter in what dark ages and dark times. And I think today you brought up the issue of Gaza in your discussion. And I think this is something that we need to look at it from that perspective. That despite all that is being happening, 35,000 people have been killed. The land, they have been robbed of their land, they have been robbed of their dignity. Yet they're saying that you cannot silence us, you cannot buy our freedom. We are free in our thoughts, in our minds, in our ideas, and we will stand for our rights no matter what happens. And I think this is something that need to be acknowledged, and certainly it relates with the Imam Hussein's sacrifice also, that you may have the mightiest army of that particular time. You might claim to be the support of those who claim to be pious. You might have the support of those people who claim to be powerful. But in terms of my belief in the divine guidance and my belief in the truthfulness of the divine message, I have this opinion and I will stand together with my family, for those principles. And if being asked, I will offer my life. I think this is what we get from the lives of these individuals. Thank you very much. And inshallah, we will return tomorrow to talk more about a few other individuals.